Hello, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. Yes,
Hello.
is that coming through? So I'm Mary Wanless. This is my colleague Ali Wakelin.
Hello, everybody.
This is our second webinar here on equine learning theory and groundwork that is specifically based for setting up the horse for riding.
And it's been great talking to a lot of you on Facebook and answering your questions. And as a result of the questions and some of the comments you've made, we've decided to start today's webinar going over the stop, go, park and backing with a horse who has done basically hardly anything of this work before we then move on to the sideways.
So we should just go for it, shouldn't we?
We should.
So
Bring us the horse. So we're going to start with Mary showing us and explaining the hand position.
yeah, so maybe we should just say this horse is Lottie. She's how old? 7. She was bred here. She's done very little for her 7 years old, I think, hasn't she? And she's done virtually nothing with this work. So she's pretty green, greener than you'd imagine for 7. So just then she stepped into my place and I've just gently stepped her back a little bit. Good girl.
And remember, when we're doing the whip habituation, if the horse moves when the whip is on them, we should keep the whip on them unless we absolutely can't until they do stand still. Then take the whip off, Mary. Yeah.
So this is starting here with a little bit of whip habituation, which...
Yeah. And I think she's quite an itchy horse. And so I think you have to watch with an itchy horse that the very end of the whip doesn't actually tickle them, which I think is partly what she's responding to. Yeah. So there's quite a long tassel on that whip.
Yeah, so
And I
I'm
think
trying to
was
keep that off
irritating
her now.
Yeah.
And it's doing better, isn't it?
Because she was moving away and twitching like with a fly. And some horses will react to that and some won't in the way they react to flies. That's looking good now.
Yes, and obviously I should do the other side too, but I think for the
we're not
sake
going
of the
to, 'cause
camera and speed
have a lot
here
to
that
get
we
through
won't do
today.
that. So we want to do a baseline job on steps back, steps forward and park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're just doing what we did last time, but on the uneducated horse.
So we'll start with steps back.
Yeah, absolutely. So we always start with step backs because the horse being a flight animal. And that was off the rein, and that was pretty good.
It was very light, actually.
And if we're starting with the horse for the first time, we would only ask for one step. So
Yes.
because you felt she was pretty good, you carried on.
I did.
But in order for the horse to really learn it is the correct answer and not to give up quite early on, it's good to just do one. So shall we just do one step? Good.
And it wasn't a big step, but it happened very lightly from the rein and from the whip tap.
We always
there.
have to think, I think when we're thinking about doing whatever, so say like a step back from like today, that we're really thinking, what answer do we want? And we have to have that answer according to the level of understanding, training of that horse. So just a single step to start with. And I would have accepted, if she'd never done it before, a heavy single step as being good for the first day.
Okay, so we're going to go step forward now.
Yep. Remembering the horse moving before the handler. That's very good.
And she was very light on the forward step and actually lighter than I thought she'd be on the stop.
Yeah, she was very good. She looks like a horse who's been fully trained to do it.
Although she isn't.
No,
I promise she isn't. This is
She
not a
isn't.
cheat.
No.
She isn't. And actually, it did occur to us that last time round the position for my hand and holding the rein wasn't very clear because I had rather grey gloves on. I don't know if you can zoom in on my hand at all here. But what I've got is the rein
Step her back, mate.
over... And that was all a bit muddly, right? So my step her back in response to her stepping forward was rather slow because I was talking to you guys. So I have the rein just over my finger there, and then I've put my first finger between the two reins. So we got my thumb, one rein, my first finger, the next rein, my second finger. So hopefully you can see that a bit clearer. Okay, so here's the rein resting over my first finger with my thumb sticking up in the air. And I'm going to put the reins each side of my first finger. So now I have my thumb and then the rein and then the finger and then the rein. So thumb, rein, first finger, rein, second finger. So, where were we before?
We've been doing stop.
So we could step forward
stop,
again,
go.
yes?
Yeah.
We could step forward again. Oh, she almost beat me to it there.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I've stepped out of the camera shot here, so I'm going to...
Yeah.
You've got me?
That was a very nice go and stop.
She's being a bit too good, isn't she?
She is, but she stepped forward there, Mary, before you asked her, I think.
I'm sorry, yes,
Yeah.
that was me just thinking...
And I think actually what happened there, Mary just said she was thinking, and she actually stepped forward off Mary's thought or off Mary's energy, which is something we do have to really watch. It can be a nice thing for them to do that, but when we're trying to make sure this is going to transfer clearly to ridden, we need to be careful. But that's what happened, Mary. You thought.
I thought.
And
I
she did.
So our expectation here is that we were going to come in with her and that she would be rather sort of wooden and stuck. We just did a very tiny couple of minutes before we started kind of going, what's her style?
And she was quite tricky.
And she was quite tricky.
Yeah.
But her style here is presenting as very different in that she's sort of sneaking forward a little bit into my space, which she wasn't doing earlier. And she has not set herself in a rather rigid, heavy way,
Yeah.
which she did
just
earlier.
check there that you released the rein. So it's very easy when you know the horse might step forward again to just keep a slightly sneaky hold, which is what you were doing, Mary. So it's really important to make sure you keep allowing them to make the mistake so you can correct it. But it's so easy to do that because you knew she might do it again.
That's true.
Yeah. So we have to be very careful with that. So we were going to then, we might as well move on and do the head lowering.
Okay.
So we were talking, there was a video of the new horse, Ella, up on the Facebook page. Pete was doing some very nice groundwork with her, and my comment was that she was quite tense and high in the head. And when horses are high in the head, they tend to be tensing their body and not breathing. So we want to show that to you today. And in order to be able to change that, the first thing we have to teach your horse is to lower their head. So we're going to do that with her.
And we hope to do it with Ella, but she's banged a leg, so we're using this horse instead.
And we will put some footage of Ella doing it on Facebook once, because she's better. So head lowering, again, it has to be trained as a clear cue, so a different signal to anything else. And we use it with we use the rein, and we use it with a downward pressure on the rein. And to start with, so release, when a horse is first doing it for the first time, any degree of lowering, we accept. Yeah. And then it's very important, you saw Mary crouch down as she head lowered. It's then very important that Mary can stand up like she has without the horse's head coming up. It's very easy to accidentally, the horse will pick up on the crouch down as the cue and not as the rein. And then you end up with them only putting the head down when you crouch down, which of course isn't terribly useful.
Okay. Now she's feeling a little bit more stuck. That was more how she was earlier.
Yes.
So there was a little more pressure involved in that one.
So I think this horse actually gets a little worried in the same way as Ella, but she shows it. She's more of an internal horse, so she shows it differently. She gets a little bit stuck and heavy, rather than Ella is much more external, so sticks her head up in the air, pricks her ears, and shows everybody she's not happy. So head lowering is a very useful tool for if you think your horse is fine, head lower, and if they won't, they're telling you they're worried.
And I think I said last time we did this that one of my colleagues once came out with the statement that thoroughbreds go ballistic and warm bloods go autistic. Well, Era is not a thoroughbred and this is not a warm blood. This is a Welsh cross, I think, something along those lines. She is warm blood? She's a warm blood Welsh cross. So, but some horses will internalise, as it were, and some horses it's very externally obvious that they're worried and not okay.
And often I'll see horses in a park and the owner believes them to be nice and relaxed, and really they are just very worried and stuck. And what we're looking for is that when the horse is doing its groundwork, that ideally it should be doing it with its poll slightly lower or at the same height as its wither. When they do that, then we know they're relaxed, and also they're starting to engage their tummy muscles and stretch their top line.
And this is one of those slightly more resistant ones that...
And you can see that if the horse is very resistant to the down, Mary adds a little wiggle in that just releases some of the muscles on the side of her neck and can help her with it.
Yeah, so it's just a little tiny side-to-side movement of my hand.
And you do have to be patient with this and just wait for the horse to agree to do it, even if they only do it a millimetre to start with. It will get very easy in the end, but it can be a big emotional deal for a horse as well as a physical deal.
And there's been several times here where she's licked and chewed after it's happened.
Which shows she's processing the information.
Okay, so we're going to go head lower, step back.
Yeah, so with head lowering, we can use head lowering with all of the movements. So we can head lower in a step back, we can head lower in a park, as you've just seen, and we can head lower in a go and also in sideways. And it can really change how the horse moves in a step back or a go, how they use their body. So we're starting to shape them for the same as we want in riding. And it also, with a horse that's very high in its head and stuck, they will never get really light on the pressure of stop or go unless they head lower, because to some degree they are stuck.
And I had an interesting experience with this a while ago in the US. On a day off in between clinics, I rode a client's horse and did a little bit on the ground before I got on this horse, and I'd watched it for 3 days in a clinic. And it was pretty clear to me in the clinic, but my gosh, it was so clear when I got on the ground that the moment this horse went to walk on, it went, and the underside of its neck just locked.
Yeah, so it went head up and long
yes, and it wasn't
and,
even that up, but there was a real lock to it. And by the time I'd done head lower, walk on, I changed that pattern. And I ended up having a ride on this horse that I think was so much better and more productive than it would have been if I hadn't done that groundwork before I got on.
I can really tell how a horse is going to go under saddle by the way they move in the groundwork.
Yes.
So we may be able to get them so they're fairly light on the cues of stop, go, etc. But how they do it is a whole nother chapter in shaping and transference to the saddle.
Yes. So that's beyond the basic response, isn't
Absolutely.
it, to how the horse makes the movement.
Yeah, and so we're just going to touch on that a little bit with the head lowering. So what we're going to see if we can do is head lower her and then ask her to step back. And the things to notice are she might initially be much heavier because her body has to actually work differently to step back with her head lower than it does in her usual pattern. So she may find it harder, and I sometimes give them a little bit of thinking time before I escalate the pressure. Very good. And what you notice with this horse is she really lifts her front legs when she steps back and really flexes the joints, but she doesn't really lift up her back legs.
Yes.
Which so she is stuck to some extent at the moment in her back and isn't really engaging her core. So the more we can get her to do step backs with her head lower and gradually increase the speed of the step back, we'll start to get the hind leg working, which will then help her for under saddle.
And I think it can be really therapeutic getting head lower step backs and getting those fluid. Yeah. And one of my colleagues who's a very good body worker reckons that's the only way that you can get a horse to stretch its psoas muscle, which is one of the very key muscles that's actually within the abdominal cavity, in our case in front of the spine, in the horse's case underneath the spine. That the head lower step back is a great way to engage and stretch that muscle. And it's interesting,
she's standing here now in a much more released, softer way.
Yes.
So what are we doing this time, Mary?
We're going to go step forward, okay. I think.
So we need to head lower.
We're going to disappear out of camera.
So in everything we now do with this horse, we're going to check her head and neck is in the correct place.
And I've just stepped her back here because she took a little step forward.
Yeah.
Okay, and that felt like she kind of took herself out of the head lower in making the step.
Yeah, so she said she can walk forward in her more long underneath pattern and hollow backed pattern, but she can't walk forward when she's head lowering. So this is the next question we're going to now be suggesting to her, that you could walk on in a different body pattern.
Okay, so now there's a horse outside that's caught her attention, so head lowering may now be more difficult.
But it's what she needs to do to get her ears back on us and focused back on the session. And so I think we should step her back again.
That was my thinking.
In the head lowering. Very good. Yes, and that's starting to get better, Mary.
Yeah, and the head staying down there without me really putting much pressure on at all.
Yeah, so shall we try the forward with the head lowering again? So just make sure she's really nice and low before you ask her to walk on. That's it. That one's much better.
There still is a little bit of an upward pressure that I can feel she really wants to go.
But that was an improvement.
It was an improvement.
Yeah, and she's a little distracted by something outside, but that was much better. So
Okay, and I'm going to walk her on and bring her around again here.
And see if you can head lower her again. So as the horse is walking, you can keep asking them to head lower again.
And I'm not being totally successful here in my
But it's getting
head
better.
lower as we're walking.
Yeah. But it's lower than she wants it to be. And I think that's the important thing. For this being her first session, that's good. She is better. But she has to change her pattern of movement in her body completely to walk on, head lowering.
So let's relate this to ridden work a minute, because a lot of times you've got people in the ridden work who are desperate about getting the horse on the bit, and they're doing all this stuff to get the head and neck down, and they get happy when the head's in the right place. But the bottom line is the horse wants to be above the bit because it takes every step it takes by elongating the muscles of its tummy and the underside of the chest and the neck that way. So if that's the horse's movement pattern, it elongates this chain of muscle under the underneath and the head will go up. And then the rider's trying to make the head go down. But if we have changed the horse's movement pattern to reach over the back and reach over the top line and reach in a way like that has the head more naturally go down, then we've done what we really need to do. And those of you who know the work, the Ride With Your Mind work with riders, is a lot about getting the rider on the top to be able to create that carriage in the horse. And this is very simply from the ground, showing the horse that it could step in that way. It doesn't have to step in a braced that way. Yeah. But there is a bit of a brace going on in her body
If
here.
you notice then with your horse all of the time, whether you're leading it in or out to the field and when you're interacting in any way and get it to head lower, within a very short space of time, they will just not be a high head carriaged horse.
Yes.
It makes a huge difference to them in terms of how they are as horses and in terms of whether they're always a little bit panicking and worried or whether they become the more relaxed horse.
So I think we should move on again here, probably. Do another one of a head lower.
So that's super. Better. And then I would stop.
It is better.
Stop. Yeah.
Oh, that was a heavy stop.
Pardon?
It was a heavy stop.
Yes. But she did, I would say, 2 steps that were really nice, head lowering and using her core. And then it was all too much for her and she went bleh. So on the forehand, if we want to use jargon. So I think you need to really watch and try and stop her on 2 steps if that's when she's that light to start with.
Okay, have we got space here to do another 2 steps?
So she's a great example. Yeah. She's always going to be heavy to some degree in the stop until we get her to learn how to engage her core and shift her weight back. And that's what we're doing when she head lowers and does the correct walk on. And stop. Yeah. Is that a little lighter?
The stop was still fairly heavy, but the first step was certainly good.
Yeah. So it's trying to notice the quality of the step, not just how far you're walking on or backwards or whatever. Yeah. And if she comes up in the stop, immediately put her back down again.
Right, yes.
Yeah?
I was listening to you.
Yes.
Millie, I think you should get Tinker.
Yeah.
Good girl. All right, so we're getting close to getting our next horse here. What do we want to do with her? Shall I just rein back again and just stop and go a little bit more?
Once more. Yes, this is good. So she's
Okay.
just starting to bend her hocks now.
Yes, and that feels different in the rein. Yeah. Again, we were starting to lose it there, maybe the last couple of steps, but the first couple of steps were really good.
Yeah, and she's just done a big sigh, which is a release as well. Yeah. So she's done very well, and she's really started to change, but it's now, noticing the detail.
She's just heard a stable door, and this is more what we thought we'd be bringing out to show you. So right now there you go. She just went into a... Yeah. So it was a head up with a lot of tension and braciness to it.
Lovely. And you got her attention back on you in a very good way.
And she's a little sneaky with that step that just comes into my space. And
she's a little challenging.
So she's kind of going, does this rule really mean it, isn't she, really?
Yeah.
This is very good, though, in terms of head down. This is, good girl.
And she keeps coming really back into our space. That's lovely. So that's a good place to finish with her.
That's great. All right. So we could do a horse swap here. Okay, and that was a good start off. All right, let's come this way.
And here we have Tinker, who you all know, coming back to join us. And we're going to use her for our sideways demonstration. I think maybe just for a few moments before we do the sideways, just do a little bit of just to stop and go, just to get her so she's focused. Just so she's,
yes. So let's
paying attention to her handler, trusting her, etc. And Tinker is a much more relaxed horse. And you can see she already has her poll at the same height as her wither. She says, okay.
Yes, that didn't have a wonderful...
No. But I think she a little bit needs to wake up and put her focus on what she's being asked to do.
Step back.
Yeah. So she doesn't put her head up and brace as she goes to step back.
Yeah, and it felt very fluent.
Yeah, she stayed exactly the same. So what we're looking for is, so as she's halted at the moment, she has her poll slightly lower than her wither, so she's relaxed, and she's going to be using her core when she then moves forwards and back. What we're looking for is that doesn't change, that she stays in the same shape as she does stop, go, park, which is what we're looking for ridden, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yes. And she's just done a lot of chewing there as well. So from here, let's do walk on. That was nice. Again, there's no braciness to that. And that was quite a nice light stop.
Yeah.
We might just repeat that. Okay, she almost beat me to it there.
Yeah.
Head came up a little bit on the rein back.
Yeah, so she was just pricking her ears at something. Very nice. And stop.
And we could, of course, test her park while we're at it, couldn't we?
And she's now looking like she's more focused on what's happening. Good.
Okay.
She's the pro.
So we want to put, you reckon, her backside towards the camera. So
yeah. So we're going to move on now to teaching the sideways signals, which obviously are a big part of steering.
Just walk on here.
So they're your turning aids, and they're also obviously what we need to be able to train into a horse for lateral work. And in this system, it's very clear that we have separate cues for front legs and back legs. This isn't true in all groundwork training systems, but because we're training for English riding and we want eventually the horse to be able to just move its bum as in travers and just move its shoulders as in shoulder in, we need to be able to separate the two. Also very important when you're training a horse to be straight, that you can move one or the other. So you wouldn't do this until you already have a very good stop, go and park. I always begin with the hind legs, as I think the hind legs are just easier for both the person and the horse to get. There's less answers they can come up with the hind leg. So what we're looking for with the hind leg sideways step is Mary's going to be asking for Tinks's right hind leg to begin with. And we're looking for that right hind leg to step under her. So she's going to be moving her bottom to the left, which in technical terms is an adduction of the right hind leg.
So adduction means adding it to the midline rather than taking away. So abduct, which we'll talk about later, is take away, as in abducting a child. Adduct is adding on to.
Very good.
And also, before you do this, she's a pony, she's not that big. I don't have to move very much to get to a place where my whip can reach her hindquarter. If she was a horse, I would have to be able to bring my hand a bit more to here.
Yeah. And one of the reasons the horse must understand park first is that you can move your body to the shoulder without the horse wandering around.
Yes. And that can be an issue. So as you start to do this, you can suddenly discover that you go to move your body to do a whip tap for the hindquarters, and suddenly your horse has taken off somewhere.
And it will become a problem when you first train hind leg sideways. The horse will at some point decide that you moving towards the hindquarters is now the cue for sideways, and you have to then go back and redo your park a little bit. So don't worry if that happens. It will happen. You will then just train park again, so the horse doesn't think you walking towards them is a cue.
Okay.
Yeah. So you
now
can
we're
see
going
Mary
to-
stroking,
Yes.
and she's testing that she can just stroke the hindquarters without anything happening. And then what she's going to do in a moment is one push with her whip to ask for the horse to move over. And then when the horse doesn't, she will gently whip tap and then escalate that if needed. So there's the push. Keep tapping.
Oh, we
Keep
have a problem
tapping.
here.
Keep tapping. Obviously, Millie's owner has taught us some tricks. Excellent. Yes. Never seen that before, ever.
So she just did what I call a cat stretch.
Yes.
That was definitely a novel response.
Yeah, what we did was we made sure we kept tapping through that, because otherwise you could accidentally teach a clever pony that that is the answer.
Yes. So
Yeah?
if I'd have stopped tapping, I would have rewarded that response.
Yeah, and you can very quickly undo it all. What I should have said was where we're tapping on the hind quarter needs to be where you will be able to tap them when you ride. Sometimes I come across people who are tapping them somewhere around their hock or their cannon on the hind leg, and that's quite difficult when you're riding. So you want to think of it as a button on the hind quarter, and that's the place you are pushing and then tapping, and you'll be able to reach that when you're riding. So shall we do that again?
We'll do that
Preferably
again.
without the trick. So a push and a tap. Very good. And you saw she clearly took one step and then she stopped. And that's what we're looking for.
Although it certainly isn't guaranteed that the horse will stop
No,
after one
but
step.
you must stop tapping. You must release as soon as that leg is coming to the midline. So you're saying that's all I want.
Yes.
And if the horse starts whizzing around, you may have to do a step back to stop that happening. But in the very first stages of doing it, like we're showing you today, if they do 2 or 3 steps, we don't care, because we just want them to know that that's the answer. Now, the thing that may happen, and Tinker's not going to do this, is that when you push and tap, they may start kicking out. You must just keep tapping while they're kicking out. A lot of horses have taught their riders, if you tap me on the bum, I kick out or buck, and then the rider doesn't do it anymore. We must train that we just keep tapping while they may trial the behaviour of kick out. They may trial doing nothing. They may trial running forward. If they run forward, we step them back. But the important thing is we must keep that tap going like you saw through the cat stretch.
So if the horse trials kicking out, just think of it as it trialled a behaviour. Don't think this is a bad horse. Just think he trialled a behaviour that isn't the right behaviour, and you just keep whip tapping until he trials the right behaviour.
And he may have had success with that behaviour, either with you or a previous owner, so he may keep doing it for a little while.
Okay, so we'll do another step here.
And the other thing to really notice is there is no forward step in this. And that's very important. Sideways, for this to work, for steering and for lateral work, must be trained purely as sideways. There must be no forward in it. If the horse chooses to go backwards a little bit as it goes sideways, that's absolutely fine. Because sideways and backwards at the same time is very hard for a horse. They'll soon stop doing it and just go sideways.
So I'm just rearranging her with her hindquarters towards the camera. And I'm going to change sides here. So I might do a little stroking on this side just to do a little habituation here.
And remember to do the push first.
Okay, so now I'm going to go push, tap, 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 tap.
Good. And you saw, so Tinker did some striking, and Mary just kept tapping until that happened. It's fairly unusual, I would say.
I've never seen a horse do
No,
this
I would
before,
actually say I've never seen a horse do this before, ever. Okay, yeah. Normally, what I would see is them kicking out with a hind leg. So this is very, very unusual. But it doesn't matter. Horses are all individuals, and they can express their trial behaviours in any way they like, as long as you don't release for it. Very good. Yeah. Now, we can see that when Tinks does this, she comes up a little bit in her head, which shows that she's a little bit worried about it. Maybe she's just working it out. But it means she's actually not engaging her core as she does it. So to make it easier for her, it would be good if she stayed lower in her head. So this time, Mary's going to head lower as she does the step. So this is not something you do straight away with your horse. They must know this first, and we believe Tinker does know it. And I think this will actually help Tinker. Yeah.
So there was quite a big head up, actually, to that. So I would say she has fairly wired in that when she moves her hindquarters like this, she lifts her head.
And that's why I think she finds it fairly hard, because if your tummy's in the way because you're hollowing your back and dropping your tummy down when you put your head up, it's quite hard to bring your hind leg under you. So what she needs to do is actually some head lowering in the sideways step.
And now she's telling me that head lowering isn't her thing.
Yeah. Because she knows we're about to say head lower and move your bum, and she says, I don't do that. Yeah. And that was closer.
Yes.
There was less resistance.
But there was still a fair bit of downward pressure on there, more than would be
ideal. This is, I think, a fairly well-entrenched movement pattern in her body.
Yes.
That can change hugely, and I'm sure will very quickly be trained out of her.
And from what I know of this pony, which is that she could and plough down onto the rein, that is rather her natural state. I haven't done this with her before, but it doesn't surprise me that the question, be athletic with your hind legs, has the answer,
It's also interesting that I think she's probably much more aware of her front legs than her back legs, because her objection comes from the front leg, not the back leg.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes. Yes, so that may say something about her level of body awareness.
Of what
exists behind her.
Yeah. Okay, so we've done the hind legs for now.
We'll do front legs.
We'll do front legs.
Let me just move a little closer here, maybe.
So the front legs is a little bit more complicated. We always start not using the rein as a cue, but using the whip tap. This is mainly because the horse was has a design problem in that it has a bendy neck. So when we ask them to move their head, often their head moves and not the legs. And we want the head, when we ask with the rein, for the legs to move and not just the heads. But it's a design fault. So we need to make sure we train in a cue that's moved the leg before we add in the rein problem. Most riders' steering problems come from the design fault of the bendy neck.
Well, yeah, this is really true.
This is true.
This is true.
So we need to actually train a horse not to bend its neck in the early stages of training. And then later on, in suppleness work, we ask them to bend their neck, but under our command.
Yes.
So the first job is stop them bending the neck.
So a lot of people's steering problems, which I've written about a lot in my book as a jackknife, is instinct for the rider is pull on the inside rein. The horse's nose comes to the inside, but the wither acts like the hinge on what we in the UK would call an articulated lorry. Those of you who in the US you call an 18-wheeler. So the rider pulls on the rein, the nose goes this way, the wither goes that way, the horse falls out on the circle and makes the circle bigger. The more the rider pulls on the rein, the more the nose goes to the inside, the more the wither goes to the outside. So we're really wanting to train that the horse gets to move the front legs without the neck getting displaced, without the wither acting as a hinge.
And what happens as well in terms of the horse's kind of movement is if we ask them, so if we use the reins to ask the horse's head to come that way, then they actually put all their weight on the front leg on that side, so they can't lift it up to step it. So we're training that does not mean that. There is no head movement in a sideways step, which is why we train it with the whip tap first. So this is different because we're not now asking for adduct, we're asking for abduct.
So take away from the midline.
So where are you going to, which one are you doing
So
first?
I think I need to be, well, how is this going to work best? You're going to see my whip tap if I'm here,
so before
but you're looking for that front leg stepping.
So Mary's going to tap the horse's left shoulder, but we're looking for her right front leg to step sideways. So that's different to the other leg. And we're tapping on the horse's shoulder, again, so you can access this when you are riding. And
sorry.
So it starts with a push, and then it becomes the tap. And we want the horse's head and neck to be straight. So I always say their head over the middle of their chest before you start this. And you'll be surprised, I mean, Tinker's doing this very well, but you'll be surprised how many horses stand there not doing it. And I don't know how much
so
you've
if her standing
it.
position was like that.
Yes, you're in trouble already.
You're in trouble already. Yes.
Yeah.
Or her standing position was like that. And I can already tell you that she's more easily going to make this position than she is going to make that
you can
position.
see that already.
Yeah? So she'd make a step rather than move her neck over there.
So we're we need to make sure the horse's neck is straight. We're trying to take that design fault out, stop the bend in the neck. So then we've done that. So then Mary is going to ask for the sideways step.
So from this angle, you're going to see the whip tap fairly clearly. I'm not sure how clearly you'll see the front leg move, but we'll do this both ways round.
Oh, we should say about your circle, how we want the horse to step. So it's very important with the front leg that the horse doesn't step forwards. And a lot of horses, when you tap them on the shoulder, their answer will be step forward. We want the horse to step sideways. And the way we do this is we imagine as if the horse is going to be stepping round on a small circle. So if she's standing like she is now, you're drawing me the circle.
I'm drawing you a circle.
Okay. If the horse is standing like it is now, we want the horse's front leg to step back slightly as they go round on the circle, and then back slightly as they go round on the circle. In the end, at a higher level, this becomes a pirouette.
And the horse has got a circle and I've got a circle. So she's moving on that circle. If I move, I'm going to move on this circle that I don't know if you can see, but I've
And the
drawn
horse
on
mustn't come into the middle bit that you could think of as sort of ravine and two cliffs.
Ooh. Right. So.
But the horse's first response will be, in the untrained horse, to step forward. And we may have to block that with our rein to say, no, perfect. Yeah. So did you have to put a bit of a back in that, Mary?
No, not really.
No? So you may have to, that you feel the horse go to step forward, put a bit of a back on there with your rein, say the answer's not forward, and then keep tapping. Because horses, their first answer to everything generally is forward, because they're flight animals.
So if I put a bit of a back on it, my hand would move that way, towards her chest.
Well, we're looking that Mary doesn't do anything with her rein at all and can just do a push and a tap, and the horse does another one of those. Keep tapping. Well done. Very good. And again, Mary tapped through the cat stretch. It's a very interesting movement pattern. Shall we do that again?
So I'm just getting the neck straight on here because it was off to that far side.
Yeah. And keep. Well done. Now, what you saw happen that time was a very good step. The horse, Tinker, stepped her left leg, so she stepped the leg Mary was tapping first. If that happens, you just keep tapping till the leg you want, the right leg, takes the step. When a horse is fully trained in this, they will literally just move the leg you want them to move. But what tends to happen, that they have a favourite leg that they like to move. So we could say this might be Tinker's left leg. So on this rein, she'll always go left leg, right leg. What should happen when we do it the other way is she goes left leg.
Shall I go back the other way or shall I do one more this way?
One more. So we do the push. Yeah, perfect. So that time she did do the right leg first and then she did a bit of a sneaky, another little step.
Yes.
But that was much better. Notice as well, she did put her head up. So she's a little bit anxious about this. And again, we would like to add in down the line the head lowering for this as well.
So,
are we going to go back the other way?
I'm just thinking, do I need to reposition her or can we go back the other way? Well,
You've got to reposition.
I think we just did that fairly well. So if we go this way, you're not going to see my whip tap so well, but you'll see the leg step.
Yeah, you'll see the leg.
Yeah? So I'm going to go stroke, touch, tap.
Okay. And she came forward.
Yes, she came forward rather bargily into my space.
She really went sideways. Now, what you saw Mary do was very well, Mary stood her ground. So the horse didn't get to move Mary. That's absolutely crucial. But you had to really engage your core and aim your energy at her to make that happen, which may not be clear on camera because Mary did it so beautifully. If you were standing there in a very relaxed manner, you would have been shifted backwards.
You would.
And then the horse would have learnt that, and then the horse would have repeated it again. The horse didn't gain anything apart from some pressure on its mouth for doing that. But that tells you the horse finds this way harder.
Yes.
Gives you a lot of information.
So I'm going to go stroke, push, tap.
Yeah. And again, there was a little push of energy towards Mary that you met very well. And then the horse said, okay, then I'll do it. And I think probably by third attempt, she'll have given up trying to move Mary.
So let's see. Stroke, push, tap.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So she learnt. That may take quite a few more attempts if the horse has success in moving the handler. Mary did that so well in being solid.
And I think it'd be interesting to just go back the other way, because that push into me really wasn't there, moving the opposite front leg.
No.
So should we do that and just change here? So this time you'll be able to see the whip tap more easily. I'm not sure how easily you'll see the front leg.
Yeah.
So we're going to go head lower a bit, push.
Well done.
Now that was an interesting change of plan from her, wasn't it?
Yeah. So she finds,
I think
in
she's
the
a
way
little
there was actually a very big, nice release there. I think she started to think maybe she'll join in the plan. So we've seen her finding stop, go and park very, very easy. She's finding the sideways harder.
Yes.
So we found what I always call the training place. We found what she needs to work on the ground to help improve her body and also for her ridden work.
Shall I reposition her again? I feel like it would be good to go both ways again.
And she looks like she's really processing now. I think there's just been quite a big release and kind of, yes, I'm going to think about it and give it a go.
Her energy is softer, isn't it? Her eyes changed, her energy's changed. Yeah. All right, darling, let's walk on and just reposition you again. So we're just going to do a go.
And then we need to show it with the reins.
Yes. Put you on a slight angle if we can. Okay. So if I move this way again.
Yeah.
So this is the way that her tendency would be to cat stretch. I was a little late taking the whip off her there because she'd actually done a couple of random steps and then stopped.
Yeah.
So she's a little bit unsettled, isn't it? About
and I would head lower.
Which leg is it going to be and what are we going to do? And
okay, then we should be ready for a go here. Keep asking. Yeah, that was much, much softer. And I think it was really important to give her that moment to just think about it, because she looked like she was really going to say, no, I'm going to do my old pattern. And then she went, actually, no, I'll soften and do the new one. So she's really learning. And she's having to work out how to use her body in this new way to do the sideways. This is really big, I think, for her.
And I'm going to do another step here just from this same side.
Very good. So what we should add into this now is actually being able to use the rein as well.
So I think I'm going to loop around and just come and halt again in a better position for the camera.
So it's crucial that we train from the whip to move the shoulders as the first cue. Once that's good and established, then we can add in the rein.
Oh, now we have some yawning.
Yeah. And we'll let her just process that for a minute while we're talking. So when we use the rein to then ask the horse to step sideways, what's crucial is the head doesn't move, but the leg moves. So we have to be ready to use our whip, because the horse will probably try and move the head, particularly if that's what they've got used to doing when they've been ridden, if they've been jackknifing when ridden. But even a horse that's just being backed would probably still move its head first. Okay, so are we ready to give this a go?
Yeah, I still think she's quite...
She says this was very big for her, learning how to go sideways properly.
All right, so if we go from...
So we hold the rein in the usual way. And we talked in the last webinar about the reins, I think, as a joystick, and we have back and forward for go. Well, we've now got left and right. So using the rein... Yeah,
and there's forward.
And then we're going to have a sideways.
And there's this way, and there's that way.
Which way? You're going to come this way first?
I'm going to come
So Mary's going to ask her to step right in a moment. So Mary has to be ready with the whip in order that when she puts her hand to the right, if the horse doesn't immediately go to put its leg right, left rather, then she needs to be tapping the shoulder.
So we're going to start with the rein.
We're going to start with the rein, but as soon as the horse goes to move its nose, we back it up with the whip.
And this is the side where she's tended to barrel into me that bit. So
and
there may have to be a level of back as well.
Yeah, so if you think of a joystick, you can put a joystick in a diagonal place between back and sideways. And so you may need to do that in the horse that hasn't learnt it yet.
Okay, So I'm going to go that away.
Yes.
Oh, pretty good.
That was good.
And there was no barge into me there.
But I think she's really done some processing, and
So there was more steps than we really wanted, but there was no barge into me.
yeah. And she didn't try and go forward, which means she's now worked out that in order to move her front legs in the way we want, sideways, she has to do a weight shift of her weight back onto her hind leg to lighten the forehand to take the sideways step. That's huge. That's what we want to happen when we ride.
Okay, so I'm going to go hand that way.
Yes. Lovely.
I hope that was visible on the camera, actually, because that was a really good step. Oh, darling. You're all right. Yeah, where did that come from?
So that was really nice. So
Yes.
we're going to do it.
So
the
that
other
was
way.
virtually a spook in place too, wasn't it? Which
Yeah.
was a nice thing.
So, shall we try the other?
Okay, so
Direction?
is this going to be visible here? I think it is. Yep.
Yeah.
So my hand won't be so visible though, or can you
It-
see? All right. Let me just reposition everything here. Am I too close? All right. So if we started there, and we're going to be going
Towards
that
me.
way. So we're going, I'll stroke a little bit,
That's right. Hand, then hand.
rain.
And step. But that was much harder. She wanted to put her nose and not her leg. She then thought, no, she'd put her leg, but it was a tiny step.
And this was what we found earlier, that the nose went more this way than that way when I was just saying as a demonstration that we wanted the neck straight, not like this or like that.
Absolutely. And which leg, front leg, have we all been noticing she waves around? The left one. So she likes to stand on the right one and wave the left one around. And in order to take this right front leg step, she's got to stand on the left one and wave the right one around. She's not so keen on that as an idea. She's only waved her left leg, I think, the whole time.
All right. So
this
again,
again.
I'm going to go rain, tap. Okay, that was
It was still
wonderfully light.
Yeah, but still a very small step. So it was great from a horse training perspective of she was light and responsive. From a move your body in different places perspective, we know she finds it much harder to step her right front leg right.
And I think this is very common, that the horse will want to weight one front leg more than the other.
It's absolutely every horse.
Yeah. And so the not weighted one moves freely. The one that's weighted, the weight has to shift onto that one for it to move. That's more of a drama. If your horse paws the ground ever, notice, does it always paw with the same leg? Does it weight one leg and paw the ground with the other leg?
And it always will.
Mine's ambidextrous.
Well, yours would be. It's because of the way you've trained it.
Yeah, right. Okay, which way are we going here?
I think we should do the difficult one. And when you have a horse like this, I would always try and do more steps with the harder leg. Because what you're doing is wiring the horse up to be able to do the step it finds harder.
Okay, so I'm going to go hand that way.
Good. And that was a much bigger step. And she almost did it without the whip.
Yes.
It was very close. And you can see that Mary's giving her a little bit of time with the rein before she uses the whip. And that's very important. When the horse is learning a new movement, we give them more processing time in the way I would give you more processing time if I was teaching you something. When we were doing stop and go and the horse knows how to do it, I'd go in quicker straight away because the horse knows how to do it and it needs to be quicker in its reactions.
The other thing worth saying is that this front leg steps behind the other front leg rather than in front of it.
Yes, which is better.
Which is better for our purposes now.
Yes.
In that we know the horse is not barreling into me.
Yeah, and the horse is learning to shift the weight backwards, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Though, of course, when it actually comes to lateral movements, one front leg crosses in front of the other.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm tempted to do another step this same way and just see
Yes.
how we do here. So,
And that's now, we can see her doing it, yeah. So again, Mary gave her plenty of time to think about it, because it was very obvious the horse was thinking about the right answer. You could see her starting to alter and shift her weight to her left foreleg in order to be able to lift up the right foreleg, because she has to make a shift, because left to her own devices, she always keeps more weight on the right foreleg. She's standing there doing that now.
Yes.
Yeah?
With the neck over there in the way that we said she likes to put it.
That's her natural pattern.
Yes.
So when you tell her to do the step, she has to change her natural way of standing to do it. Whereas you will get a quicker reaction with the other foreleg because she's already set up to do it in her natural way. This gives you so much information for when you get on to start doing sideways, because you know what the horse is going to find hard.
And also what we're doing is taking things that most people would just never notice and gloss over, and kind of really showing you the value in noticing what would fly under most people's radar when they look at a horse and do this work.
The attention to detail is just huge in,
Yes.
in noticing, and how it relates into the ridden work.
Yes. And in many ways, my own work is that level of attention to detail to the ridden rider's organisation, or the rider on top of the horse, their organisation, and how the horse responds
Which is
and
why
how
I
they
think
interact.
I have taken the more basic system of Andrew's and looked at it in this detail, having been trained in your
Yes.
system to notice that with riders' bodies. I've now taken it into the horses' bodies.
So we have just a few minutes here. Do we want to do the other front leg again, or any hind legs again, or are we going to take questions? What do you
I
think?
think we could take questions.
From where I am now, so to just move towards you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we can do that for you.
So I'll call out what I do. So I might just do a little bit of stroke. So that's whip habituation. That doesn't mean anything. She knows that. I'm going to do hand this way. Tap, 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 tap.
Good. And like the hind leg, we're only asking for one step at the moment. She's only offering one step because she's finding this tricky to do. But eventually we can ask for a step, then another step, and another step.
And we had more of her legs moved there than we really want. We got some hind leg involvement there as well.
But the more the horse shifts its weight back onto the hind leg in order to do the front leg step, the less the hind legs will move. If you get a lot of hind leg movement, it's because they're still weighting the forelegs too much and they're still too heavy. You need to check you're not holding them up too much, holding them too much.
So let's just do one more step this way. That's going to go reins. Oh, good.
Yeah. And then she did a little bargy forward step. As Mary said, oh, good, because it wasn't oh, good for the step.
Yes.
The horse then went, huh.
That's exactly right. There was one brilliant step. I went good and she went plough.
And I don't think the horse didn't think, I'll get you for that. What happened was the horse did a really good step and thought, that was really hard, and ploughed into Mary. She didn't do it deliberately.
Yes.
Yeah, but it was. So just when you're thinking everything's great is normally when it's just about to go wrong. Because while you're thinking it's really great, the horse is thinking, that is really hard for me to do, and they take it away. But no, that was a beautiful step.
All right.
I think
Questions?
Yeah,
Yeah.
questions if anyone has
Questions?
So I know one from the top of my head. The first one was, why hold the reins as you're holding them? What's the purpose of the way that you hold the reins with it over the hand?
Okay. So the question is, what's the purpose of holding the reins this way? So with the buckle of the rein over my hand in that bit of flesh there between my thumb and my fingers, and my hands like that. So one of the big purposes is how easily I can let that go, and how easily I can take it up again, and how easily I can let it go.
without dropping the rein on the ground.
And that I have a little bit of differentiation between the right rein and the left rein.
I think that's really big. And for when we move on to doing individual reins, I think that's very important.
Yes.
If you hold them together, then what happens
they're
is
acting as one.
You're just acting them as one, which can be just a very basic joystick kind of way. But we're doing it ready for when we move this on to using individual reins.
And, you know, if I hold them as one, I feel like I haven't got as much sensitivity, actually, as if I do it that way. That it's easier for my hand to be a little bit softer, and that I have more baseline sensitivity there.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you keep the young green horse focused on the exercises?
Basically, by making sure that you work out how long they can focus for, which may not be very long. And every time they take their focus off you, you give them a question. So what they learn is when they take their focus off you, they get the answer wrong, and which means they then get more pressure. Yeah, if a horse, so it depends on what the focus is. Is the young green horse basically just being what we call a tourist and just going, oh, look over there, isn't that interesting? Or are they going, whoa, what's that? Oh, what's that? So if they're worried, we would do a lot of head lowering until they brought their attention into the space we're training in. And we saw that with Lottie earlier. She would be pricking her ears and looking, we head lowered, she came back into the space. But if they're just being a tourist and just looking around and not concentrating, like looking out of the classroom window, then we would very much, every time they went to look out the window, ask them a question. They'd get it wrong because they're not listening, at which point they get pressure. And so they soon work out they need to be paying attention.
Okay.
So the question is, would you start with the horse's harder leg and then use the good leg as a reward? No, but what I would always start with the horse's easier leg because I want the horse to come up with the right answer as quickly as possible. I always want the right answer to be the easiest, if possible, solution for the horse. But I'm not sure that a lot of people would know which was the horse's easier and harder leg. I think you've got to have done this for a long time to be able to work that out without going sideways, and I wouldn't say I can always tell before I've actually started to move them, though there's a lot of clues, like Mary was talking about, which way she liked to have her head and neck bent, but I think you might not know. But as soon as I know, I will always ask for the easier leg first, so the horse gets a clue as to what to do. And also I get some clues as to what might happen, and then I'll do the harder leg. But then I'll do the harder leg more, so that you wire the horse up.
So in lateral work, should the pressure of the bit be in the same direction you're moving?
That's a question about direct rein and indirect
Yes.
rein.
So maybe we should just repeat the question. The question
sorry.
was, in a lateral movement, should the pressure on the rein be in the same direction that you're moving in?
And we haven't had time today to go into using direct rein and indirect rein. But basically, to start with, we're using the joystick, which is a combination of both. You then move on to indirect rein, so the horse is moving away from the pressure of the bit, and then you move on to using the direct rein, which is moving towards the pressure of the bit.
But if that just fried your brains, don't worry about it, because that's really more what we're dealing with in our next webinar. Yeah. So we're not going to answer that one fully, really.
No, and you can ask me questions on Facebook about that on the closed page.
So someone's asking, what benefit does this bring to the upper level horse?
Okay, so the question here is, what benefits does this bring to the upper level horse? And I'm going to tell you the story of one of my colleagues who is a Grand Prix rider, international level, and she'd been doing a little bit of groundwork like this with a young horse one day, and the next horse to ride was her Grand Prix horse, and kind of just because she was in that mood, she went to do a little bit with him, and she went to go walk on and realized that his head came up in a walk on. So then it became head lower walk on. And it became apparently quite a drama of a session that took a long while. Well, this horse had a lot of conviction that he had to go head up before he did move off. And the story goes that it changed the horse really significantly, that session. I had somebody on a course with me this last week on a horse that had competed. Prix Saint-Georges and I won. It was trained to Grand Prix. I'm not sure how much competition it did in Grand Prix. And there was definite stickiness in the rein back, which would have really benefited from start from the ground.
And we had a horse, thinking of the sideways steps that we've been doing today, and we worked on a horse together in April on a lateral teacher training for the coaches, where she was having problems. She was just beginning changes. This is Leonie,
yes.
With a Frisian, and she's one of the few people who's done really well at medium, I think, at the regionals on a Frisian.
Yes,
and she was struggling with the changes. We didn't realise, she hadn't told us this. We were on the ground doing the front leg steps, and it would not step one way. and this was the direction it wouldn't change into. And having gone home, she suddenly said, this is going to help me with my change. There was also some body work corrections with the Ride With Your Mind that you worked on. And then she messaged me not very long afterwards to say she could now do the change. And it was entirely due to what she'd learnt on the ground and in her body.
So there you go, 3 advanced horses and 3 nice changes. So I think we should wrap up at that point, shouldn't we? So neither of the horses we've had today responded in quite the way we thought they would.
No.
They've been, I think, some very interesting learning for all of us along the way of that.
Yes, the cat stretch was...
The cat stretch was definitely unusual and novel. Congratulations on doing a first. Never seen any pony
And
or
don't
horse do
worry
that
when you're
before.
doing the sideways steps to start with. Don't get too muddled about exactly how they do them, apart from they mustn't walk forward. We were moving on quite a lot into the shaping of it today.
But the idea that if they move on a circle and you move on a circle and they mustn't barge into that space in between you, that's probably one of the bigger deals that you're going to face when you start to do this.
And I look forward to your questions and videos on the Facebook page.
And then we'll see you again in another month or so.